All right, it's me again, and I don't have good news for you. I apologize. I know it's been a real negative week. I am very thankful we got our Stop Killing Games and Elder Scrolls 6 videos out because this has all been worse than I imagined. And if I'm real honest with you, I don't think it gets much worse than what we're about to read here today. So just wanted to put it right up front that this is going to be a negative video, and if you're not in a great headspace, by the end of this video, based on what I'm about to read to you from Bloomberg and IGN, I think you'll be more angry at both Xbox leadership as well as the hand that was dealt to Zenimax Online Studios, because unjust is the word of this video. It's just not right, especially with how leadership was assuring with this project, what they did to fortify this project last year. We're going to get into some shutdown Bethesda studios from last year that were designed to support the Zenimax game. And also, you just have to look as far as Elder Scrolls Online to see how well-oiled of a machine Elder Scrolls Online and Zenimax Online Studios are. The projects speak for themselves, and I feel like based on the money they were making, which we'll also talk about, they absolutely earned their ticket to make their own thing and get all the time they needed. And it's funny because I think Xbox leadership agrees, but what we're learning here is one of two things. Either A, you can't believe a word that Xbox leadership says, or B, they don't really have the power that we thought they did. So we'll talk about both those options. But ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here, you're into what's going on with really gaming as a whole, consider subscribing. But today, I'm just thinking of that Zenimax team, man. I feel so bad for them, and it is no mystery why Matt Firor, the founder of Zenimax Online Studios, left. And as my co-host of Defining Duke, Lord Cognito, shared on the show, he left because exactly what was happening here. He was like, nope, don't want to be a part of this, basically in protest, and I don't blame him. So now let's read from Bloomberg. Xbox executives were blown away by an upcoming game. Then they canceled it. That's a hell of a headline. On Wednesday morning, employees at the video game maker Zenimax Online Studios noticed something strange. The executive producer and creative director of their next big game, codenamed Blackbird, no longer had active accounts in their internal chat program Slack. It was also public news that ZeniMax's parent company, Microsoft, was planning mass layoffs, including deep cuts in the gaming division. But there were no indications that the studio's own project might be in jeopardy. Back in March, they had delivered a demo of Blackbird to executives including Microsoft Gaming Chief Executive Officer Phil Spencer, and had received rave reviews according to people familiar with the project. This will be the memo of the story here, is how assured ZeniMax Online Studios was versus what happened this week and how they were absolutely blindsided. It makes me so angry, because here's what you're going to learn with this story is how it's one thing when the fans were kind of turning on Phil Spencer. We were already seeing that over the course of this last year, really starting with the multi-platform push last year. Now we're seeing in 2025, the devs starting to turn their backs publicly on him and the leadership core. And that to me spells disaster, because it's like now no one internally, externally is having faith in this leadership core. And it's why I called for a shakeup. I was like, I think of it like a sports team. I don't know how much longer you can manage a disaster of a team before the coach got the change. So whoever it may be, I think there's got to be accountability at the top at this point. And you'll feel that same way once we're done reading this all. So it continues on. Shortly after the disabled Slack accounts were discovered, the company scheduled a project update meeting at 11 a.m. U.S. East Coast time. During the meeting, they got the news. Blackbird was being shelved indefinitely. Translation, it was canceled. Shortly afterward, the rest of the team was also lost their Slack accounts. The next few hours were marked by chaos and confusion as employees found themselves in a kind of limbo status, waiting to see what was going on. There were no messages or emails from management or HR. Members of the team believed they had been laid off, but they had not received any official word from the company. A day later, they got an answer. They were in job purgatory. Late last year, the staff had unionized, but they had not yet struck a contract, so Microsoft's lawyers had to negotiate with the union over potential severance packages for anyone who was losing their jobs. In the meantime, they would continue getting their paychecks and remained Zenimax employees, the union told staff on Thursday. QA staff who had a separate union with an established contract received severance packages as mandated by the agreement. A Microsoft spokesperson confirmed as much to me Thursday morning, quote, represented employees are awaiting information regarding these proposed impacts and next steps, which are subject to negotiations with the union, end quote, the company said. So yeah, kind of what we covered on day one of this debacle. They got blindsided. They had no idea this was coming, and just accounts were being deactivated for the creative director of the project. Let's keep going though, because this is where it gets spicy. Blackbird's cancellation was particularly shocking because it had blown away executives at Xbox just a few months ago. During the demonstration in March, Spencer was enjoying the game so much that Matt Booty, the head of Xbox Game Studios, had to pull the controller away so they could keep the meeting going, according to two people who were in the room. Do I even have to talk? That just speaks for itself. Like, do I even have to talk? I don't. You just read that, you know exactly what? You liked it this much. This is a trend, though. We saw this publicly. Everwild. Here's Phil on the Xbox Era podcast sitting there talking about, in February, how great Everwild was. Yeah, we gave that team time. Really happy for them. It's shaping up. Very excited about it. July hits. Canceled. You just can't trust what this company says. And what does this say to the teams that work with Microsoft right now? What does that say to them when leaders come in and are pretty much like the kiss of death? Like, are you actually visiting to see our project, or are you just like one final goodbye, right? He visited Tango, Rare, now we know Zenimax Online Studios, and all of them have something canceled or they go away forever. Now, if you're a team working at Xbox and the leadership core shows up to your studio and they're like, this rocks. I can't put the controller down. I know at the end of the day, we're talking about like 1, 2, maybe 3 people in a whole boardroom, but it's very clear to me that they do not have the sway they once did where, whoa, we can't cancel that. Doesn't matter. Microsoft's now heavily involved in what gaming is doing. And so these tough calls are going to be made more and more. And I think, again, this is just the start of like a complete bloodbath over the next year or so at Xbox. But again, it whittles away that trust where even if you hear your project's great, it's progressing well, as we'll talk about in just a moment here. It doesn't matter if the leadership team, like the highest, the CEO of your gaming division is like, dude, your game rocks. It doesn't matter. What does that say to your team? Like, how does that produce a healthy working environment when none of this matters now? I said I had nothing to say, but here I am. All right, let's keep going. Despite some technological hiccups and a lengthy development cycle, the game appeared to be making good progress. Employees were stunned to see they were caught up in the bloodbath. Zenimax Online Studios was founded in 2007 to develop The Elder Scrolls Online, a massive multiplayer online role-playing game set in the popular fantasy franchise that spawned Skyrim. After a rocky launch in 2014, Elder Scrolls Online received several updates and went on to bring in millions of players while transforming into one of the publisher's most lucrative games, bringing in $2 billion in revenue by 2024. That's insane. That is the golden ticket right there. If you are a company that can generate that much money with an IP and continue to do so in like a maintenance mode, like as in, okay, we know this well-oiled machine. We know what Elder Scrolls Online can and can't do. Its fan base keeps coming back. Like, we can keep milking this thing dry, quite frankly. That is your golden ticket in this sort of genre, especially one that has such little competition. WoW, Final Fantasy XIV, and oh, I'm sorry, the developer of one of the best ones on the market, ESO, wanted to make another online game, and we're not going to allow that because it's going to take too long. If Bethesda, who is not in their prime, right? They were not a company really flush with cash outside of Bethesda Game Studios, can find a company and in 7 years make an MMO, and then that MMO launches in a shit state, and Bethesda can hang with it and bring it to this sort of height. There is a lesson to be learned there. The same thing could be said about Fallout 76, a game that came out, and that disaster is well documented, so I'll just leave it there. But we've seen the recovery, and there's something to be said, while as much as I get the criticism at Bethesda, I think it's fair, about how they've hung with projects. And it's something that in Xbox's acquisition of the studios and the talent, they don't understand their minds and how their products function. This is a game that is made by a company that more than proved their worth by putting something on the market and in that stretch of a decade making $2 billion. Why would you not give them the chance with a game that, as we're seeing here, as reported, was on track, was doing well? Minor hiccups because, as we'll talk about, they were making a new fucking engine, dude. Like, yeah, it's going to hit some speed bumps. Let's get into the origins of this. Like, when did it start, how it was going, because this can balance the conversation, I think, like mildly so. In 2018, the company began building a team for its next project, which it gave the codename Kestrel. Later, the team switched to the codename Blackbird because they liked Kestrel so much they wanted to use it as the actual name. The game faced some early technical challenges and was put on the back burner because of the ongoing success of Elder Scrolls Online, which vacuumed up most of the studio's resources in recent years. Blackbird's progress had sped up. The team expanded to 300 people, delivered impressive vertical slices in March and was aiming to release in 2028. So here's the tough part of the conversation. 2018 to 2028, you don't really get away with 10-year development cycles in this industry. What we don't have here, which I don't know if it's been intentionally left out or not, is when exactly did Blackbird speak up? We have a mild idea as early as last year, but when did it really start becoming a primary focus, right? We knew it was like hundreds of people for multiple years. So that's the only thing I will say, is that if you're spinning your wheels for a decade, that's pretty tough to defend no matter who you are. However, when we know what it takes to get an MMO off the ground, these things do take really long times. That's the God's honest truth. And by the way, not a modern development climate thing, like everything takes 8 years to make. This has always been the case with MMOs, and we know why. They're full of so much content, it's stupid. But what was Blackbird? What was Zenimax Online Studios making? This was actually the surprising part to me. Blackbird was a third-person online looter shooter, not unlike the popular game Destiny, set within a new franchise. It had a sci-fi noir aesthetic similar to films like one of my favorites of all time, Blade Runner, and placed a heavy emphasis on vertical movement. Players could use abilities such as double jumping, air dashing, a grappling hook, and wall climbing to fling themselves around tall buildings like superheroes. I saw footage of the vertical slice last night and was impressed. It was a slick-looking demo with alluring visuals and battle sequences. Xbox executives were also blown away when they played Blackbird in March, according to people familiar with the game's development. Executives had nothing but complimentary words for the project. Following the March meeting, the team put together a production plan that would flesh out the vertical slice and then build out more content for release. Then, yesterday, the game was canceled, stunning everyone at the studio. Matt Firer, the well-respected studio boss and director who founded Zenimax Online Studios and led ESO, immediately tendered his resignation. Staff were not given an explanation for Blackbird's cancellation. It was set to be an expensive project, and Xbox may have seen it as too risky. It was a new franchise and a live service game entering an oversaturated market during a time when many other live service titles have flopped. The team was also building a brand new engine for the game while making it, which created a number of challenges. A Microsoft spokesperson declined to elaborate on why it was canceled. But Zenimax Online Studios was not an unproven developer. It was the maker of one of the most lucrative online games in history, a title that generates significant profits every quarter. And this is a great way to end it. Canceled video games are easy to glamorize. They always exist in a crystallized state, preserved in our imagination without any of the flaws or controversies that inevitably arrive upon release. But for people who saw and played Blackbird, this one stung. Extremely well written, extremely well put here. Lots of thoughts here as well. For starters, the idea of them making a looter shooter is interesting. It's different. I think on paper, to me, it was really about that universe, like Blade Runner-esque. I'm super into that stuff. When it comes to the pedigree of Zenimax Online Studios, that's why I'm really behind this project, because that's what excited me so much. Like, they learned so much through making ESO. They've kept ESO as this well-oiled machine. It's an MMO I go back to frequently, and that's rare for me. Granted, I do love Elder Scrolls, but that's rare for me. It's tough for me to stick with an MMO with how many games I review. So I think that's saying something. It's like, oh, they're doing something new with all they've learned here. Like, obviously, it's never a guarantee for success, but there's reason to be excited with what's on paper. Here's the key word, though, vertical slice. When did we talk about this? Yesterday. I talked about with Perfect Dark and how we learned through one of the lead level designers on the project at the initiative that the demo we saw was a vertical slice. And as I described in that video, the vertical slice is, long story short, the thing you take and you go, this is indicative of our quality standards. Here's the timeline of what it took to make us. And then you put together, as described here, the production plan of like how long it's going to take to make a full game with all of that. What we see here in this article is it was going to take them till 2028 to do all of that based on the vertical slice and other things they had made in that timeline of developing Project Blackbird. So the game wasn't even in full production yet because they had to focus on Elder Scrolls Online because that was making more money and they were building a new engine for this thing. My theory, based on where Xbox has gone, and I'm looking at you, Halo, my theory is that Xbox ran scared from this thing simply because of the engine. Especially if leadership loved it. It was going along well. Production plan was together. Like, everything was clicking according to what's being reported here. Not just to Jason Schreier, by the way, but IGN, as we'll talk about here in a second. All of it was going well. So what would scare them? Money, of course. But if we're looking at a 3-year production plan in full-time development, that is not that big of a swing, all things considered. Like, oh, you need 3 years of full-time work with this staff to do this. Okay, got it. But again, this is me like armchair game deving a little bit, taking that out of the scenario. what problem did Halo Infinite run into? This is what I think informed this decision. Halo Infinite runs into a ton of technical complications. Halo Infinite is run by a ton of contracted talent. So what happens when your contracted talent's contract expires, you have a technical issue with your very exclusive studio engine, and no one is there to fix it. You run into disaster after disaster after disaster. And my strongest guess is that Xbox saw this and was like, oh, we can't do this on Unreal? Nope. We don't want to, nope. Like, because they've been outsourcing this stuff. And this has been common across the industry. Like CD Projekt Red, I think the Red engine, granted, it had its issues with Cyberpunk's launch, but I think Cyberpunk is like really good nowadays. I'm like, I worry a little bit about just dropping all of that tech, that proprietary tech for Unreal Engine. But now we don't have to guess about what exactly this game was. We have gameplay details straight from TrueAchievements.com, and it's a full breakdown from the story to the gameplay, all the way to the planned live service rollout for this game. They write, in Blackbird, you would play as a Revenant, an operative working for alien syndicates on a remote, tidally locked planet called Soteria. One side of the planet burned under an endless sun, while the opposite side was covered in ice. Between the two regions would have been a habitable area known as the Twilight Band. While the game offered a huge open world to explore, there was a focus on the planet's capital, Exodus, and the many secrets and mysteries hidden within the hovering megacity. Despite being controlled by a sentient AI called Pan, which operated the city's systems and kept everyone in check, 5 alien syndicates ruled the population in a stratified society with human revenants acting as a neutral force to maintain balance. The syndicates were being designed to act as a faction system similar to Bethesda Game Studios' RPGs, and included the Menst, an ancient race of arrogant aliens that believed they're superior to other species. Alternatively, there were the Kalpatin, the famous media experts who charm and manipulate their way through the power struggles in the city. There was also a strange aquatic species called the Nemocytes that used exosuits to survive in Exodus. Completely opposite to the Nemocytes were the Warren, a tall, furry species of clannish aliens who were masters of business. And finally, there was the Trahet, a race feared and respected for their unique abilities to extract someone's deepest, darkest secrets. We would have also come across many other alien species in our travels, from humanoids and alien-esque creatures to large quadrupeds and insectoids. So yes, all this on top of like a very noir Blade Runner style world. But let's get into the gameplay a little bit, because while a lot of people were thinking Destiny with some of the initial details from Shire's report, I think more Warframe. Warframe with like a Destiny hub, whatever they call the hub in Destiny 2, because I played that game like one time. But nonetheless, here's the breakdown. When not exploring Exodus, you'll be sent out on missions to unlock fresh rewards similar to Destiny and Warframe. General missions and activities would support up to 4 players, while strike missions could have been tackled by up to 6 players, likely due to being tougher challenges to conquer. The main storyline involves solving a high-profile murder and restoring order to Exodus, while repeatable assignments from Pan would see you working to maintain balance within the city, and various side quests would have seen you learning more about the aliens inhabiting the world. Large public events called firefights had also been planned, forcing you to survive within Exodus's constant power struggles. The missions would have been offered by the alien syndicates you work for, seeing you making new friends and enemies as you work to unlock powerful new rewards. Much like ZeniMax's other MMO, Blackbird would have offered players new ways to customize their character, craft and upgrade gear, and complete progressive challenges for higher quality rewards. There were also plans for a housing system, daily login rewards, and PvP, although, much like the Elder Scrolls Online, Blackbird would have primarily focused on co-op gameplay and shared world elements. And this should sound familiar to those of you who have played ESO. A lot of these elements in this game, that kind of shared world aspect, the co-op driven aspect, but also having these skirmishes just pop up in the open world that you're all roaming, like it is very ESO coded, but it's trying a new gameplay style, which is where I start to make the Warframe connections. But let's keep reading a little bit more about the world. They say ZeniMax had already planned out a launch district called Old Central and had live service goals in mind. The team wanted to roll out new events weekly, monthly, and quarterly to keep players busy. It's a similar event system we see in ESO now, so the events could have been filled with unique loot. Further story chapters, including fresh districts, main quests, and zones, would have expanded the world further. Again, a similar cycle to ZeniMax's fantasy MMO. Here's the thing. A lot of people are going to look at this and be like, oh, it's a live service game, it's a high-risk genre. And that's true. But you have a extremely proven developer when it comes to supporting a live product. Elder Scrolls Online, as I've iterated many times in this video, is a well-oiled machine. They don't miss. There is no like, oh, sorry, we disappeared for a while, or things didn't go according to plan. Literally, no exaggeration, no hyperbole. they do not miss. I'm not even talking about quality, just they're always there. That is one of the reasons why ESO is so dependable. They always have regular updates. If there's any team I believe with my heart of hearts could have delivered on the weekly, monthly, yearly events like all these other developers promised but never hit, it was Zenimax Online Studios, because they have proven that before. There's a reason why myself and others were optimistic for this game on paper. ESO's done its thing, it's great, but with all those lessons learned and establishing that great pipeline, bringing it over to a new IP is a no-brainer. Continuing on with gameplay details here, Revenants were fully customizable and the team had already worked out 3 archetypes, or classes: tanky guns for hire, environment controlling tech operators, and healer style characters called augments. You would define your character's personality as you progress through the story, role-playing various choices and interacting with NPCs that you would potentially come across as morally gray, leaving you to define your own experience. The team was aiming to use Elder Scrolls Online's deep character customization and monetization aspects in Blackbird 2, so there could have been some form of in-game store similar to ESO's Crown Store for additional premium cosmetics. We'd have customized our Revenant, including sculpting their body, adding scars, tattoos, skins, biomodification, cybernetics, and bodysuit layers, modifying various weapons, and customizing our own apartments, vehicles, and drones. Our source tells us the team was experimenting with the skill system when the project was shuttered last week, so nothing concrete had been laid out, but a full progression path and a skill tree would have been present. Although playing similar to Bethesda RPGs, the team was aiming to have it feel as accessible as Destiny, as dynamic as Warframe, and encompassed in a mysterious world similar to Horizon Zero Dawn. Again, monetization. People hear that and they go, oh, that would have been shit anyway. But I always remember when ESO launched and it was a subscription-based game. And a lot of us were like, hell no. And guess what they did? They made it a buy-to-own game. You buy ESO once and you don't have to pay for a subscription service. There is one there, but take it from someone who bought the game once and hasn't subscribed to it and hasn't gone into the Crown Shop. You don't need any of that stuff. It's all cosmetic. Again, they handle this stuff so responsibly. Like, they were the chosen one. That's how I view it. It's like my episode 3 moment. Like, you were the chosen one. So it's just so frustrating to see them get boned like this. But we can see here, like, the archetypes that were set up. Now we get a little bit into traversal. This is where my Warframe comparisons really take off, because they say traversal was a core aspect of the game, with Exodus offering a vertical playground for players to explore, equipping players with a grappling hook, and according to our source, you'd have been able to climb and wall run on any surface. The team wanted movement to feel natural and fun, similar to that found in games like Spider-Man and the driving in GTA. ZeniMax wanted players to learn to feel the rhythm while moving, pushing them to adapt to changing obstacles by ensuring the environment had its own visual language. If it looked like you could climb something, you could climb it. With that said, it would have been important that no content was blocked from players who found something challenging. It wasn't a platformer. That's a process the team had showcased in Elder Scrolls Online since the beginning, letting players explore content without the worry of level blocking or being unable to get the hang of a certain mechanic. Accessibility has always been one of ESO's defining factors, and likely would have been a success here if Project Blackbird had been given the chance. That's the other thing, man. A lot of companies prey on FOMO. Not ESO, not Zenimax Online Studios. I know I'm like really singing the praises of them hardcore here, but you can check the tapes, check the receipts, go watch the old Mr. Matty videos. I've been hyping this game up since like really Tamriel Unlimited. Like, I've been hyping this company up since then. They have not hit speed bumps in my opinion. I've always appreciated, especially one Tamriel. When that came out in 2016, that was a game changer for ESO. I had a friend who was a really high level. I had dropped off the game because I wasn't enjoying it as much at that time. They brought in one Tamriel and we got to play all the content regardless of our level together. So you're telling me that a company who is responsible with live service, is consistent with live service and content delivery, and also one who is fair with how you access that content in a world where almost none of that exists in a developer, had their project canceled. It's a cruel world, man. But also, you hear about this traversal. Warframe has great traversal, great point A to point B movement. I can totally see this being a touchstone for what they were working on with Blackbird. And so that's also a shame, because I would have loved to see some competition in this space. I mean, especially if you're Xbox, I find it so strange that you look at Destiny and how weak that product is. Like, this market is kind of open for the taking. I feel like Borderlands is getting hype simply because Destiny's fallen off and there isn't this real strong looter shooter. We just heard Outriders 2 was canceled. Like, this is like an open market, it feels like, at least at this moment in time, for them to ramp up into full production. So it just feels like such a missed opportunity. As the article starts to wrap up, they say, with that said, traversal played a major role in the general gameplay loop, which was being designed to have players using the environment to gain the upper hand in fights. Much like the skill system, it was still early days for combat, so we're short on specifics, but multiple weapon types would have been available, alongside upgrades called amps and the aforementioned skill system to let players craft their own play style while taking on enemies. Interestingly, our source tells us that Zenimax had been toying with ideas for multiplayer side content away from the combat that would have put the traversal system to good use. That's just great system design, including races and obstacle courses. One mode the team had been toying with was the blend of basketball and Quidditch. Our sources say there was a ball to dunk into a ring, and you could pass or shoot, offering an experience that felt like Titanfall 2, although not as fast. The multiplayer elements and co-op gameplay would have opened up to players after they had completed the tutorial and could experience everything the game had to offer with friends, or alone if that's what they preferred. Much like ESO, power scaling would have let players play together regardless of their level or skill, while amps would have opened up cooperative synergy. So yeah, that's basically it. I'm going to twist the knife once more, and then we're going to get into IGN's report here. In a development release review meeting that took place in late June, so very recently, Zenimax leadership were not expecting for Microsoft to shelve the game. In fact, the team was preparing to ramp up development after several years in pre-production and was in the process of executing a $300,000 purchase order for hardware when the news came that the game wouldn't be going ahead. After several years in pre-production, Zenimax was preparing to enter full production this October. Initially, the team was aiming for a 2-year development window with a late 2027 release, but our source says the release window had moved to late 2028. That could also be a defining factor in this cancellation outside of the engine. If 2027 sounded good, but one more year, sorry, that recoup is too tough. But yeah, man, brutal read. This sounded great. It really would have, to me, come down to the story, at least based on what we're seeing on paper, because a lot of things in storytelling sound simple and good on paper. Here's the real kicker to me. The real kicker is when we toss it over to IGN now. They had a similar report, a report that when it broke, I corroborated because I had received similar information about this game. It was like a new IP, sci-fi MMO, and it was trending well. I had no other information beyond that, but I figured like, hey, with this being out there, I should at least help firm up what's happening with Zenimax Online's game that was in development. I have not seen it. I don't know anything else. But one thing that they have in their article that's not in Jason's article is this. Again, the article titled, Elder Scrolls Online Devs Unannounced MMO was doing well and even scaling up as Xbox cancellation blindsided staff, sources say. Jumping to the part that's new, in the last year, sources tell IGN that pre-production was going well and the team was actively ramping up in the hope of moving to full production soon. Xbox had approved the scaling up, and some individuals were being moved onto the project from other teams such as the Elder Scrolls Online, as well as some people that were absorbed from the shuttering last year of Arcane Austin. One source recalled being told last year by head of Xbox Game Studios Matt Booty in a meeting that Xbox's closures of Arcane Austin, Tango Gameworks, and Alpha Dog Games were done for the purpose of justifying increased headcount for other game studios that needed, including Zenimax Online Studios. Again, what do you want me to say? This is the thing. Like, I don't know how people read this and they don't get angry, right? And I'm not trying to fan the flames of anger, but I just look at this and I go, these are people, man. Like, I'm not saying you guys got to be a charity out there, but these are people, you know, like Bethesda is known as like a family, and most of that family is gone, by the way, but they're known as a family, and you've taken these family members, scattered them everywhere, moved them everywhere. Okay, consolidation happens. Okay, fortunately, a lot of the shutdown studios and team members that were part of last year's bloodbath found new homes, particularly in Zenimax Online Studios. All this was with Zenimax Online Studios was finishing the job from last year. That's all this was, finishing the job from last year. The deed is now done. Like, you could have rode defense for Xbox a bit last year and been like, hey, look, Tango got saved, Arcane and some of its staff, Roundhouse some of its staff, Alpha Dog some of its staff, got rolled into Zenimax Online Studios. It really wasn't that bad. And like, I was willing to hear it out because I'm like, okay, like, sure, like a lot of best case scenarios ended up playing out as well as I guess they could have. It still was an awful situation though. But now the deed is done. They're all gone. That whole team, according to IGN, was laid off for Blackbird. Like, you know, that is incompetence. That is unacceptable, especially when you as a leader are telling your team, you're safe because they're done, or you're safe because we folded these in to justify the head count. That's why you're safe. So they roll with that. There's a trust relationship between the publisher and the developer. And when you break that, that's when you get leaders like Matt Firer, a visionary, leaving. You lose Harvey Smith, Shinji Mikami, John Johannes. Give it time. I'm sure Pete Hines gone. Give it time, though. I'm sure Todd will be out at some point. I would not even be remotely shocked. Anyway, I know it's been a lot of negativity, but this one in particular just really, like, I read it and just, like, how? How do you mislead them this much? You know, especially when the product's looking good and everyone's liking it and it's on track and the plan's there. Like, it, you know, I look at how many games Xbox just let go. Like, keep going and keep going. Like, I'm sorry. I'll pick on a couple of games here. I look at State of Decay. That's been going forever. I look at Compulsion Games and South of Midnight. That was going forever. And it was like a 10-hour game. Why do some games get this level of grace that seems like forever and they don't deliver, or if they do deliver, it's years down the line? Like, why do they get this long leash, but a company like Zenimax Online Studios can't get one? It's just not fair. That's all it is. It's just not fair. It's unjust. And so that's the story today, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully the bad news will start to slow down now. We'll be playing Death Stranding 2 this weekend. We'll have a video out on that, so just look forward to that one. It'll be it's a fun time. I've been really having fun with that game, but otherwise, hoping the news just, you know, takes it easy on my heart for a little bit here. So let me know your thoughts on what's going on with Zenimax Online Studios. Looking forward to seeing what you think. Other than that, take great care of yourselves. Be safe out there. Stay sexy. Stay active. I love you all. Peace.